Dr. Nitin, we would like to know a little bit more is how do you see the growing requirement for sulfur globally at this stage? And what about its role in increasing the agriculture productivity?
Yeah, thanks, Syed. I think before that, I would just like to really, you know, appreciate all the efforts by Tab Group as a whole. It's been, as I mentioned earlier times, last time, it's always been a pleasure to really, interact with you guys, and the team is, too good. Real,
Thank you.
it's really, energizing most of the time. So, answering your question, if you really look at the last 50 years, the sulfur deficiency in soil has increased by leaps and bounds, actually, and that has come. And that's mainly because of three reasons. One is, and the major one is due to decrease in the sulfur emissions from the industrial as well as transportation sources. The sulfur deposition from atmosphere is much lower than a few decades ago, which used to be a major source of sulfur actually. So it's good and bad, but so we'll have to take it that way. Second is that the modern agriculture has become more and more intensive. Use of high yielding varieties, hybrids, short growing seasons, more frequent kind of crop rotations happening now. So there's a lot of consumption. The nutrient consumption has increased from the soil's point of view. And lastly, the third reason is in fact a very interesting one, and that is that um, the you go across the world, talk to farmers. Traditionally the focus has been on the high analysis sulfur-free fertilizer. In the sense, they just talk of nitro, NPK, that's all, urea, DAP, and So I think that's the awareness which is now coming in. According to the Sulphur Institute, global sulfur deficiency is estimated to be around 12 million metric tons, and this is, I'm talking of 5 6 years ago. This is the data. According to some experts, these numbers have now jumped up to almost 18 to 20 million metric tons. So that's the kind of number, deficiency of sulfur that you can keep in your mind. And that's the reason perhaps that sulfur is today recognized as the second major macronutrient after nitrogen. So that's the change which has happened. So the second part of your question was the role of sulfur in this increasing agricultural productivity, and I believe so. Sulfur has, I would not perhaps want to go in those details, but sulfur, technically speaking, is present everywhere in terms of it plays a major role in the overall crop health in terms of it's participating in large number of processes, part of enzymes, part of chlorophyll, basically. It's a catalyst to form chlorophyll. So there's a lot of as a constituent of the plant system, it plays a key role in the overall yield as well as quality of the produce that is there. And the only problem which we see, the challenges that we see, is that traditionally, as I mentioned, one is the use of NPKs, which has been there. In terms of sulfur, the usage has been of the forms of sulfur which actually leach down immediately. They are sulfate forms which actually leach down quickly, ammonium sulfates and other sulfates. So the real availability of sulfur still remains, deficient in that sense. And that's one. So there are a lot of runoff losses, leaching losses. The nutrient use efficiency of those kind of fertilizers, the traditional ones, is only 8 to 12%. You can imagine rest of where it is going. It's only 8 to 12% which is getting into use. Thirdly, if you really look at the sulfurs of the world, the real, suppose, elemental sulfurs, which is the bentonites, they are large size granules which are 50 to 180 micron in size. They take a long time for oxidation because elemental sulfur has to convert to sulfate to get absorbed by the plant. It takes a long time, even sometimes more than even 1 to 2 years. So so when you apply, the farmer is applying, but the actual absorption is not happening by the plant because it's not converted in that form. So in this, looking into these kind of challenges, plus one more thing is that the practice of sulfur fertilizer use or fertilizer is more like broadcasting or just applying in the beginning, uh, while while the world is moving to the more advanced micro irrigation systems. So we just, as sulfur mills, we identified these two areas. One, how can we make the sulfur available quickly, but it should be available throughout the life of the plant. I mean, that's one. Second, we thought how could this sulfur be utilized in the advanced irrigation systems, and this was second. And how could the nutrient use efficiency be improved, and no leaching happens. So that's how we got into this innovation of micronized sulfur form in sulfur mills. And it's a patented form of sulfur that we have launched, and it's the world's lowest dose sulfur fertilizer, which can be used at almost, if you can say, I can just say that traditional sulfur fertilizers are being used at around, say, 30 to 100 kg per hectare, and ours can be used at 10 to, in fact, 8 to 15 kg or 20 kg, maximum 25 kg, depending on the soil types and geographical location. So that's the advantage which we have tried to bring in. The particle size has gone down to 2 microns, 2 to 3 microns, compared to 150 to 180 microns that the traditional fertilizers are doing. So I think so that's the whole. You know, we believe that with these kind of introductions and innovations, we can bring value to the farmer, and at the same time reduce the overall environmental footprint. Getting into that mode, plus get also be savvy. I mean, be in sync with the latest technology of applications like micro irrigation systems, which are targeted towards less water usage. So yeah.